Buenos dias and good morning. There is an old cliche. It says, build something and people will come. What does that mean? It means building a transportation system allows natural growth within any geographical space. In today's presentation, I will be briefly describing the U.S. economy, the U.S. cement industry, as the Portland Cement Association predicts the construction industry, the transportation system, the definition of a transportation system, and the components of a transportation system, Argos U.S. region logistics, and how does it fit within the U.S. rail network. I'll be covering brief history of the U.S. rail network, when the first rail and locomotive was moved in the U.S., and today what the network looks like. Then we will discuss the Argos. Then we'll discuss the Argos strategy in terms of our ports and terminals within the United States. The U.S. economy demographics. The United States demographics and statistics. 50 states in the United States. Our capital is Washington, D.C. We have 9.8 million square kilometers. The population is just under 319 million. Government, constitution base, federal republic. The GDP, or the gross domestic product, is $17.4 trillion. GDP per capita is just under $55,000. The US is a very diverse, cultural diverse country where the majority of the race is Caucasian. US economy, a snapshot of the last 10 years on GDP. Why 10 years? Argos first entered the United States in 2005. And I will show how Argos have grown from 2005 until now. In 2005, the GDP was 3.3%. And in 2009, after the financial meltdown, we went to a negative 2.8%. The President Obama administration injected some stimulus money, and by 2010, the GDP was 2.5%. Over the last 5 years, we have maintained some sort of stability with the GDP. On December 2015, the GDP was 2.5%, which was a 0.07% change year over year. The unemployment rate for the same 10-year period in 2005 was just around 5%. Again, the financial meltdown within the world and the US. In 2009, our unemployment was just over 11%. You see there's a gradual declination in the unemployment rate, and as of December 2015, the unemployment rate was at 5%. The consumer index. In the US, the consumers use what we call the consumer index to look at it's a degree of optimism, to look at the state of the economy and how the consumers is spending or saving money. In 2005, the consumer index was 96%. And you see what happens with the graph. Over the years, it was very low, which means that consumers was not spending and savings was probably higher. And the gradual increase. In 2015, December, it is almost 93%. Mortgage rates over the mortgage rates on a 30-year fixed period 2005 was about 6%. Mortgage rates for a 30-year period was the lowest in 2013, just about 2.5%. Today, we are seeing mortgage rates up to 3.5%. What that tells us about the US is that we are seeing some sign of recovery and some sign of growth as a result of job creation, consumer spending, and most of those jobs is initially as a result of the construction industry within the US. The US cement industry. The US cement industry is predicted, the projection of the US cement industry is governed by what we called in the US the Portland Cement Association. The Portland Cement Association is a powerful and vocal advocate for the sustainability of jobs, creation, economic growth, and infrastructure investments in the US. They are existing for over 100 years. In 2005, the consumption of cement in the United States was 120 million tons. In 2006, 120 million tons the consumption. The installed capacity for cement production in the United States is just over 100 million tons. Therefore, the ports within the United States was critical for that period where cement had to be imported from Asia, Europe, and the Caribbean, and Colombia in those years to keep the consumption. As you see, as everything went down in 2008, 2009, the cement consumption went below 75 million tons. So plants are idled in the US, while some imports is still trickling in because of cost of production in other countries versus the United States. Now, in 2015, the consumption is 89.8 million tons, which means that the economy, there is growth. You look at the Portland Cement Association prediction for the next 5 years, and it's showing that we will come back up to levels of 110 million tons. In the US today, the cement production plants is under stringent scrutiny and regulations from the EPA in terms of the NOx and SOx emissions, including the carbon emissions. And as a result of that, some cement capacity or some cement plants within the US may need to be closed, or a vast amount of capital expenditure is required to bring them up to specifications for the environment. As a result, having ports and terminals in the United States, as you would see later on, what Argos strategy is very critical for the supplying cement into the United States. In the United States, there's 9 regions that the Portland Cement Association talks about. These 9 regions, the color codes, the red means that they have a growth of less than 1%. The green is growth greater than 5%. Argos USA operates in this region. We operate in Texas, we operate in Florida, we operate in Georgia, the Carolinas, we operate North Carolina, South Carolina, some states in we operate in Alabama. So we operate in this corridor. And out of that 89.8 million tons consumption, in these states that Argos operate in, the consumption is 30 million tons. And out of the 30 million tons, Argos supply 11%, or just over 3.6 million tons of cement. Transportation system. The definition of a transportation system as specified by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. It says the application of a technology and scientific principles to the planning, functional design, operations, and management of facilities for any mode of transportation in order to provide for a safe, rapid, comfortable, convenient, economical, and environmentally compatible movement of people and goods. Simply, it is really an optimum combination of fixed facilities, flow entities, storage systems or storage facilities, operational plans, and the control systems that allow people and goods to travel or move from one origin to one destination by overcoming frictions that are imposed by those geographical spaces where constructions of stations or terminals is constructed. Fixed facilities, flow entities, operational plans, storage facilities, controls, systems. The fixed facilities is really the fixed assets, the space, the land, the movement, the roads, the infrastructure itself that presents in the facilities or a station. The flow entities is the things that transport over these facilities, that is the goods, the materials, could be dangerous cargo, could be cargo that is less dangerous, how the system is unloaded, how the system is offloaded, and at the same time how the system transflows from one mode of transportation to another. For example, from rail to truck, or truck to rail, or barge to rail, or ship to rail. The operational plans is really the way the terminals is managed and operated, or the stations, and the use of the facilities for storing equipment. For example, as we will talk later about the rail cars, some trains that Argos pulls within the United States is almost over 1 mile long, number of cars. So to offload these trains and to store these empty cars, the storage facilities need to accommodate for that type of trains. The control systems is just really the cost management. And one of the most important things in this slide is the environment and safety. I must commend your beautiful city, Medellin, today for not just celebrating Earth Day, but for having less cars in the road to reduce carbon emissions. So congratulations on that. And we would see later that trains assist vastly in the reduction of carbon emissions because of the new technologies. In any transportation system, whether it is a station to move people, to move goods, to move entities, there must be certain economic, cultural, social, political, and environmental benefits. If there is no benefits, some systems may not be feasible to be constructed or installed. What are some of those benefits economical? It must be, the economic benefits is the type of transportation, the mode, the design, the style, trucks, rail, the number of cars, the fixed assets, and what also happens with any developing or developed countries, the construction of a transportation system or the construction of any system brings natural growth and development within the community or within that area that the station or construction of the silos is being conducted. The cultural side is the safety of the people, product that is moved through the facilities, and the way the system itself is operated. On a political side, it is important for certain geographic spaces within the United States to adhere to all regulations that are imposed by the governments, local governments, and federal governments, in terms of environment and safety and health and being of the people that's operating and living within the vicinity of that area. Also, in the construction of a station or a terminal or a transportation storage facilities, law and order is very important. So we require the government to assist with the policing and ensuring law and order because again, it must be safety, not just for the people, but safety for the product that are being moved through the facilities. The environment, as we mentioned, before any of this is done, a complete environmental assessment must be conducted, where we look at the air pollutions, water pollutions in terms of storm water, the runoffs from the rail tracks, the runoffs from the roads. Noise, very important. Everything that is construction within the United States or Argos currently operates below 85 decibels. So if there is equipment that is purchased or inherited due to acquisitions that are over 85 decibels, we will put engineering controls in place to ensure they meet those requirements. A brief slide to show the advantages and disadvantages of the rail. The trains, as you see in this rail versus truck, carry more loads. For every rail car, you can replace 4 trucks on the road. A train in the US or a hopper car in the US or a tanker can hold up to 110 tons. Sometimes you could go to 115 tons, depends on the designs of the tracks. The speed of the rail averages about 80 miles per hour in the US versus truck averages 50 miles per hour. Although, during the crossing of the roads or where the train intersects with the roadways, the train slows down to almost 0 speed. But it then picks up speed in the tracks. In terms of safety, as I mentioned, for every truck that is removed, every rail car, you remove 4 trucks. So the risk of accidents is removed tremendously as a result of moving product by rail. Moving product by rail, you have the most tons per mile than if you move products by truck. One of the main advantages of products by rail, for example, in the US, you can have a facility, operation or factory in the Midwest and have your markets in the East Coast, in Florida, or the West Coast, because the ability to move your product that you're being manufactured or sold over those long distances in a timely manner. If you have to compete in those markets using trucks, it's difficult, and the number of trucks in the road it's congested highways, and it's dangerous also. Degree of freedom is just the fancy word, but it really says that because the tracks are predetermined, the trains could only go in one direction, or the direction that the track is predetermined to go. A truck, however, could go in any direction. Environment. As Pedro would have mentioned yesterday in the locomotive new designs, electric locomotives versus diesel locomotives, the carbon emissions reduction as a result of that. In the US and in today's world, the environmental pressures put upon the locomotives or the rail industry is just as high as if you are manufacturing cement or if you are burning coal in a power station. You are regulated based on the SOx requirements, NOx requirements, carbon emissions, and total hydrocarbons, which means that the diesel fuel or the fuel that these machinery use today becomes more and more expensive, and they must have total combustion in the system for that to take place. Now, as we progress into electric type mobile or electric versus electric and diesel, it reduces the carbon emissions. Yesterday I saw the slide from Pedro that showed that rail removes almost 2/3 of the emissions. Trucks is about 75 grams, whereas rail is about 21. So the employment, the land use is disadvantaged because you need more track space to store the cars when not in use and store the locomotive. The employment, any transportation system, especially the rail, brings employment in that geographic area. It just grows because for one to think about installing a transportation system, a rail, or installing a storage facility, it means that there must be some sort of growth foreseen in that area in terms of employment, in terms of jobs, in terms of close to the markets. The maintenance of the trucks is less than the rail because rail require track maintenance or regular inspections of the tracks, regular inspections of the cross ties, and of course the car itself in terms of maintenance. Self-service is really about the in stations or in storage facilities where bulk material is moved. It is pretty much, you could have it self-service, but you still require employees to perform minor maintenance and operations. Also, the train moves on scheduled time versus trucks can move at any time. The train must be moved on a schedule. Long hauls, the advantage, because you move more miles and more tons. The US rail network. This is interesting. In 1830, the first rail set of tracks was built by the Delaware Hudson Company for the first locomotive, which is the Stourbridge Lion. It was built to move coal between New York City and Pennsylvania and the canals. But 10 years after, this is what the network looks like. So within a space of 10 years, there was a series of short railroads constructed within the United States that still exist today and form part of the major network for moving people and freight by rail in the US. This is the network today. The network today consists of 141,000 miles of rail installed, of route miles, and about 256,000 track miles. There's 7 companies: Union Pacific, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, which is the BNSF, the CSX, Norfolk Southern, Canadian National, Canadian Pacific, and Kansas City Southern. Argos USA operates in this region. So we utilize CSX, Norfolk Southern, some parts of BNSF to move our product throughout the US. Now the rail companies are privately owned in the United States, which means that every single rail company that I showed, privately owned. What do they own? They own the tracks, they own the rail lines, which is the tracks, they own the terminals in terms of a transflow terminal or a station, they own the rights to operate, they own the leaseholds, and they have good relationships with affiliates. Why that is necessary to have good relationships with the affiliates? For example, go back to the map. Argos may move cement from Florida to the Carolina or Wilmington. We have a plant that is a throne's throw away from the Wilmington terminal. But yet, we find it economical to move cement from this point to this point, using 100 rail cars instead of using 4 or 5 rail cars from this point to this point. Mainly because we have to change companies that are operating. We have to change from CSX to Norfolk Southern, and sometimes the commodity or cargo that we are transporting is not a priority on the track. So the freight rate changes as you move from one company to the next. It is interesting that in constructing a network of rail like what you're seeing here requires investment from private companies. And when that happens, it helps the whole coordination of moving the product from A to B with affiliates from one company to another. Freight transported in the US. In the US, freight is moved by rail, water, pipeline, truck. And the rail network accounts for 40% of the US freight move by ton miles, and 16% by tons, which means that 16% of the total tons that is moved in the US is moved by rail. Pipelines, a very small percentage. What we move in pipeline is oil and gas throughout the United States is moved by pipelines. And within the US, we have the rivers where we move barges through certain areas from the seaports to inland terminals that are on the rivers. In 1980, there's something interesting happened, and yesterday I saw from Pedro's presentation the intermodal train carrying 2 sets of containers. This is a large growing business in the US, and it is necessary to continue to service the household users of products that is coming from Europe, Asia, and sometimes the Caribbean. Thank you. The US network present. This just shows the benefit. This picture is one of Argos USA terminal in Mobile, Alabama. So that is owned and operated by Argos. The benefits of the rail: reduce highway fatalities, fuel consumption, reduce greenhouse gases, logistics costs reduced. The main public infrastructure, there's a cost to that, but it's reduced in the long run. This is Argos USA. As I mentioned earlier, Argos came into the US in 2005. And today, Argos USA, 10 years later, Argos operates all these dots that you're seeing on the map is Argos cement and ready-mix operation in the United States. In the regions that Argos operate, which is the Carolinas, Florida, Texas, and with Alabama, Argos is the second largest cement producer in this region, just in 10 years. And in terms of ready-mix concrete, Argos is the second largest in the United States. We operate with 7 million tons of installed cement capacity, 17 million cubic yards of ready-mix concrete, 109 million units of blocks we manufacture. Our revenue was just over 1.3 billion in 2015. We have over 3,000 employees in the United States. We have 3 cement plants that are located in Florida, Alabama, and South Carolina, 3 grinding plants, 300 ready-mix plants, 13 block plants, 6 ports, 6 inland terminals. We operate 985 rail cars, and we have 1,734 ready-mix trucks in the road. If we could move concrete by rail, we will, but we cannot. Argos USA, this picture here is Argos Port in Houston. This is owned and operated by Argos. That is a 45,000 ton ship from Europe with cement that Argos is importing into their terminal in Houston. As we mentioned, the terminal must have fixed facilities, flow entities, operational plans, and storage facilities. This is the network that we currently utilize by Argos. The Houston Port, Mobile, Savannah, Wilmington, Tampa, and Port Manatee. Those are owned and operated by Argos. We currently import cement from Colombia, from Europe, and soon it may be Asia. If you look at the arrows, is where we have our main cement plants and how we move the cement by rail into different terminals, to Arkansas, to Durham, North Carolina, to Atlanta, and to different areas. This is the line I spoke about earlier of moving cement from Tampa, Florida, to the North Carolinas, rather than moving cement from this point to this point. These are all Argos facilities. This is the Savannah, Georgia port, Tampa, Florida, Mobile, Alabama, Houston, Texas, and Wilmington. And we have inland terminals in different areas of the US. This is just a snapshot. We move 4.2 million tons of cement in the US, and the slide shows 1.1, but we move 1.3 million tons by rail. Why 1.3 million tons? 1.1 million goes directly to our terminals, and the other 200,000 tons goes directly to the customers. That was not part of this. And we import approximately 600,000 tons of cement to supplement our production. In any terminal strategy or any station, we must look at the various components, the internal factors, the external factors in establishing a terminal. It is not in order, but we must understand the unloading system, the storage facilities that is needed, the way the transportation is moved throughout the facility, the sourcing plan, where the cement is coming from, which plant, which country, how we're going to source, secure the markets, how we're going to ensure that we have enough product for growth. So a complete study of the market analysis must be done. The capital investment is required, the amount of money that is required, the payback terms, what exactly Argos is looking for in terms of the terminal future expansions, in terms of what we want out of the terminal. Then we look at the type of products that move through the terminal, the level of automation, the seasonality in the US. We have 4 seasons from Florida up, and as a result of that, it impacts the way we move material within the US by trucks and rail, and how these terminals is operated, because as a result of the winter periods, construction industry goes down. Then the external factors, the traffic flow, the site conditions and locations, whether it's we want to purchase the land, whether it's lease land, ensure we fulfill all regulatory compliance in terms of the environment, safety, and the time frame and reaction time for the facility to be operated. And of course, constant negotiations between the major stakeholders and players in the construction of a facility. Argos rail cycle time, this is just to show an indication of what is taken into consideration with any train. The cars is ready for destination prior to departure. That is a loaded car. When the car leaves the destination, its origin to its destination, it is called the transit time, or the loaded transit. Then the cars or the train gets to its destination, sometimes it have to wait. So there is some demurrage applied. It have to wait because there may be other unloading facilities taking place. There may be other conditions. So it goes on a side track and wait. And then we have, when the car is empty, it must go back to its origin of loading. And that is another transit time. Typically what happens in the US to move a unit train, it could take 14 days, the entire cycle time. From the time it's loaded, and the time it gets back to reloading. Typically on a train that is 1 mile long or 120 cars. In the merchandise service, it takes longer. Why? Merchandise service is where we move 3 or 4 cars at one time on the track. So the rail company will move many different products, and they will attach our 1 or 2 cars to that system. So that takes longer, because there's not a priority at that time. We move about 1.2 tons per month of a rail car. As I mentioned before, we operate 985 rail cars in the US, and we move approximately 1,300 metric tons per car annually. Okay, that is my presentation for today. Thank you.